Hello and welcome to Curiosity's Sake. Today we'll be reviewing the Dog Island. And no, it's not Dog's Life. I already reviewed that one. Like 9 years ago.
I love my axe.
I say this because several people I've spoken to have said that this is Dog's Life or think it's Dog's Life. It's not Dog's Life. Anyway, now that that's all cleared up, The Dog Island is a 2006 game brought to us from the Dog Artist Collection, which is a Japanese company that was actually kind of ahead of its time. They took pictures of cute dogs and cats and uploaded them to the internet as art for people to buy and own. They also seem to donate the proceeds to this, at least in part, to animal charities. Although I have to admit, trying to navigate their website is an absolute headache. Like, there's just layers inside layers, it's like a Russian doll. I think they should really fix this because it was a nightmare to get through all this. Some of the pictures they've taken are quite famous. You might have seen them from time to time used in memes or just general internet shows.
Have a better plan. I'll marry a wealthy man. Wouldn't that make you gay? Not necessarily. That would be okay. What?
Some of them might have even appeared in television or film. The beagle used on the European cover of this game is actually still showcased on the website as a piece of art that you can view. Now, when I first saw this in a supermarket when I was like 11 years old, I kind of expected it to be, I don't know, something like Cartoon Kingdom, or maybe one of those crap kids games like Postman Pat. But no, the cover is very deceptive. I didn't touch this as a kid because my cheap caching crap alarm went off and I avoided it. I would say that this was judging a book by its cover, but when the cover almost feels like something trying to look like a cheap caching game based on a licensed product, you know, the worst kind of product you could possibly buy, yeah, I think it's more than justifiable to not pick something up because of that. The Japanese cover actually looks better and it's way more accurate to the product. I don't know why they just didn't use this internationally. The Dog Island is a sort of adventure game set in a world that is inhabited entirely by dogs, and you go on an adventure as a dog of your own choosing in order to find a cure for your sick brother. Honestly, the thing that made me want to play this was scrolling through images of it and finding this one of the pirate captain dog. Why wasn't he the cover character? He's not the main character, but hey, they've done that before in gaming. It would have sold more copies. So join me as we begin the weirdest 14-hour adventure I've had for a while. At least since Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure. Wow, Yuke's and Ubisoft logo following each other. This really was a completely different time. This game opens up with the most sickeningly wholesome intro I've ever seen, where we watch some small dogs be cute for a few minutes, whilst there's a kid singing about... Actually, what is he singing about? Actually, I really don't know what he's singing about. From what I can understand, it's about how isolating the world is and how fortunate we all are to find someone to share it with. The music in this is surprisingly good. Like, bafflingly good. We'll talk about that more in a bit though. We get an intro in our sleepy seaside town. These two are licking each other in the street, which I'm not against, but come on guys, keep it in the bedroom. But most important of all is the pirate captain dog, who arrives at port and has a meeting with a mailman. This is Captain Eldorado. He's kind of an important character, at least in the early game. Ahoy there! So, you're the new mailman. Yeah, that's one thing that's funny to me about this game. The dogs have mailmen. Now, it's an age-old stereotype that dogs hate the mailman. So, I have two major questions about this. The first is, do dogs chase the mailman if the mailman is also a dog? And the second is, does this mailman dog have existential crises because he's the thing that he hates most in this world? I don't know, but I think that would make a fascinating spin-off art film. Or hell, even a spin-off art game made by the Chinese Room or something. One of my boys kept this letter in the wrong place, so it got soaked. And the address got all smudged. Can you still deliver it? Well, this postal service is better than the human one, where it would just go in the trash or be sent back to the person who sent it with a middle finger drawn on the envelope. Hi, Captain El Dorado. Let's see. It's barely legible. Then he just runs off with the captain's letter. I'm impressed that anyone in this universe can write letters, given that nobody has opposable thumbs. One thing you kind of realize very quickly is that despite the fact that everyone in this universe is a dog, everything is still built like humans would build it. So they seem to be using tools that are designed for human hands that dogs can't possibly use. I do wonder if this was a human society, and all the dogs came together with a common ideal.
Humans tasty. Yum yum.
And then took over their society and are now just left with a world full of technology that they just sort of have to adapt to as best they can. Because they don't really have the means to start over or anything like that, so they just built on shoulders of giants. Then there's this guy licking his balls in public. Pretty sure this guy belongs on a register, along with the creep who just watches him. So, Postman Prick walks up to the sleeping guy instead of the awake people, though the awake people are blowing themselves in public. Okay, so maybe there is a fair reason in this case. Hey, old Donatello, could you help me? It's about this name. Any idea who it is? Oh yeah, ask the only dog in town that wears glasses. The guy with the visual impairment has the best chance of anyone of reading your letter. Well, it's hard to make out, but... Oh yes, it's that boy's house. Now, what was his name? So, then you pick your character and make them from scratch. Now, the game seems to think that you'll definitely pick a boy dog. And if you pick a bitch, then you're going to get misgendered a lot, as the dialogue constantly refers to you as a dude. Now, the game gives you a lot of choices when it comes to your dog's breed. Like, a lot. It's kind of impressive. You have 48 options, all of which have similar bodies and switched around features. But hey, for a PS2 game, this is pretty damn good. So, you also get to choose if you have a brother or a sister. I picked the brother, mostly so that his comments about the boy living there make sense, as the boy certainly isn't me. I remember now. Both are nice kids. You don't remember shit, old man. It is a shame about their father, though. So, Donnie here tries to tell the mailman the story about how Gwen's father died. But A, why would he care? And B, in a small town like this, he probably already knows the story. And C, he's working. He can't just sit around all day listening to other people's sob stories. Anyway, Postman Dog has a smooth recovery up his sleeve and uses the opportunity to escape. So Post Dog brings a letter to Gwen's house. And here's me. I wake up to my mother and brother. My brother has apparently been sick and he gets to wear clothes and I'm some kind of nudist. I need to go to the milk store to buy milk. Wait, there's a store that's just milk? Wow, okay. Yeah, thanks mother. I'm pretty sure I can find the milk store in the village that I've lived in my entire life. Thank you, you are a paragon of helpfulness. Oh wow, mother, the shop with the giant milk bottle outside is the milk store? Oh, thank the Lord I have you here to give me such crucial information, you loathsome bitch. I make fun, but this is a game for younger audiences, so I can give it a pass for over-explaining stuff at times. And we get to move around. It's a very basic affair, you just use the analog stick to run around, pick up the pace with the circle button, and you can also bark and sniff around. Barking and sniffing come in use later. Talking to your brother Emilio, he tells you that there's a festival coming tonight. The opening of this really is reminiscent of Dark Cloud. I hope the festival gets better than it did in that. Actually I don't, that was awesome. You leave the house and your mother finds the letter. It's apparently from her nephew who wrote it because he just learnt to write. So we go for a walk around the town, and now is a nice point to talk about how this game looks. I actually really like this game's presentation. It has a nice look to it. That's pleasant to look at, and it gives me the vibe of a DS game. Every one of these houses has some personality, a bit like my street, and every character is different. It's a really nicely designed game that's clearly had a lot of effort put into it, and I very much appreciate that effort. Honestly, it's what makes it stand out, and it's what made me even want to do a video on it to begin with. There's small chickens that you can bark at and they react to it. There's a few things to interact with in the town. Not a great deal, and nothing too deep at this point, but I appreciate how nice it is and how much space you get to explore. Bear in mind, this is just the start town for the prologue. The game comes later, like the real game with the world in it. I think it's kind of smart to not put too much in this part of the game, so you don't waste more time here than you should. So we talk to this guy Enzo. He informs us that we have no milk because his son is a useless sack of crap. The basket I need to make the deliveries are gone. Oh no, that are not true. Tell me that are not true. Yeah, there are a few grammatical errors in this game and the punctuation is weird at times. I'm fairly sure that this is due to it being a Japanese game translated into English. However, it could also just be a programming thing, like how basket is red, and it makes me wonder if this is some sort of variable. Though it won't be needed anywhere else, so why they do this is beyond me. Maybe it's like a linked quest item or something, like when you program the quest, referencing that item causes it to turn red in dialogue. I couldn't tell you. That's my best guess. Or maybe they were just unsure that people would know to look for the basket when looking for the basket. Anyway, it's a good thing that Enzo's son here is so useless, because if he wasn't, his even more useless father wouldn't have realised that he'd lost his basket, and that he's fucked tomorrow. So, he teaches me what the basket smells like. This is a thing that dogs do, and I'm not quite sure how they do it, but they can teach other dogs what things smell like. It's like some weird Time Lord power where they touch heads and suddenly share knowledge. I guess it's like when you hold up an object that smells like something and the dog looks for it. You know, like cops do with sniffer dogs? But I don't know how that works here. Did the basket have a handkerchief or something? In this case, you could maybe imagine that the smell of the basket is around the house. But then it's like quests where you have to find a unique mythical item that no one's ever seen before. And then there's always just a guy who's like, oh yeah, it smells exactly like this. Here, sniff my hand. Yeah, that's its scent. Go find it. And I'm like, how did you have the scent of this thing that you don't even really know exists on your hands? So this part of the game exists to teach you how to sniff. The best way that I could describe it is it's kind of like a metal detector. The little circle ring around the object lights up more and more the closer the object is, and you press the triangle button to dig it up. It's not a bad system, though it can get a little annoying if you're really close to the thing you're looking for but can't find the sweet spot. Though most of the time the sweet spot just isn't too hard to find. This is thankfully a game for kids, primarily quite young kids, so they made it quite easy for them. It's not the easiest game I've ever played, but it's up there. So, by sniffing around a bit, you eventually find the item. I have to admit, it does make me wonder why you can be on the final bit for so long before finding the damn thing. But hey, it does add a bit of suspense and makes it more satisfying when you do find it, so it's not all bad. Took me a while, but I eventually found it. It's nice that you get a self-contained area to attempt your first sniff so that you can just find things easier. Wait, Knuckles' sister was at the festival last year? Typical, I bet down south they got Sonic the Hedgehog, but for the crappy northern festival we get Knuckles' sister. Look at Armadillo here, wearing the game's logo on his hat. What a shill. We bump into the postman from the start of the game. He's interestingly named Mr. Postman, so I guess his career options were well defined as a kid. I mean, you walk in an interview and you say, hey, I'm Mr. Postman. And few people could say no. I mean, you were born for this. Anyway, the postal service is your save function in this. You can also get letters from characters whilst on your adventures later on in the game. You can also send things back to them. We'll get into that in a little bit because it's like its own thing. You bring the milk back to your mother, and your brother asks if he can go to the festival, but your brother is sick with itis, the pox, so he can't go. Now, one thing I'll give this game is that it at least doesn't sugarcoat this. It's implied that Emilio could die if he has too many overhauls. So, the festival starts off well, but then a big purple genie turns up and blows everything up. Wait, nope, sorry, that was... different scripts got crossed over, sorry. Emilio's conditions worsens before nightfall, despite drinking his milk. So he can't go to the festival and he's sad about that. Gwen's friends try to help her, but they suck at it. I mean, her brother is really sick and possibly going to die someday, and they're like, get over it, there's a festival on. Anyway, shooting stars happen, and old Donatello lets us know that it's a bad omen and that we're all going to die or something. Anyway, he's right, because Emilio sneaks out to the festival. So I guess Gustavo, who I assume is the boss of the local mafia. Anyway, he's organised a treasure hunt. Good. The rules are simple. There's 3 spiral shells in the... I can't do the fucking accent. Okay. Good. The rules are simple. There are 3 spiral shells hidden in the town. You need to find them by sniffing and bring them back here. The winner is the dog who finds the shells and makes it back here the fastest. We have a prize, so every dog do your best. This is what a spiral shell smells like. Well then, ready? Hey, isn't that your brother? Oh no, absolutely not. You're not with me. Beat it before people realize how uncool I am. I like whilst Emilio explains himself, Gwen goes into attack stance and growls continuously. Like, she's waiting for him to finish so she can tear him to shreds. In all honesty, I don't see the problem. This is all happening on his doorstep, and he only had to walk like 10 steps to get to the festival. Can he not just turn back and go home if he doesn't feel well? Well, I found the shells, and I win a bouquet of flowers. Thank you, just what I always wanted. So, Gwen, what are you gonna do with the flowers? Oh, silly. Obviously, she's gonna give them to his sick little brother. I like how they got my gender right in the first line and then got it wrong in the second. That takes skill. I couldn't even record that line without messing that up so that I got it right both times. Anyway, this dumb bitch gets Emilio's hopes up that he's gonna be getting a bouquet of flowers. So, if I don't give them to him, I look like a right asshole. Thanks, Viviana, you really dropped me in it there. I mean, I don't want a stupid bouquet, but if I did, I'd be really put out here. But he can eat the flowers or whatever if he wants, I guess. Oh shit, he's dead. Oh good, there's a sea captain on the scene. That's like the 3rd down from a doctor, I guess. Well, guys, let me tell you about this place called Doggy Heaven. So, Dr. Dog tells us that the kid is basically sick for the long haul.
Is a doctor like a physician or a professor?
Yeah, he's a professor. Of being a dog? Ooh, faced!
Yeah, Gwen, bark in his face. I'm sure he really appreciates that whilst being deathly sick. But, there is another. Doctor, that is. He's called Dr. Potent, and he lives on the Dog Island. Unfortunately, the Dog Island is a bitch to get to, so we'll have to go by boat. The problem is that there's several storms that have made the Dog Island kind of hard to reach, so there's a chance that the boat won't make it to shore. I like how this doctor tells us all of this and then says, nah, actually that's a dumb idea, the doctor might not even make a house call, you should just give up. Sorry to dangle hope in front of your face and everything, but you know. Anyway, it's time for us to step up to the plate. We're going to the Dog Island, we know a captain with a ship, and we're the protagonist. So if a storm hits us, the worst that'll happen is it'll cut to black and we'll wake up on the island. That's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to a protagonist at this point in the story. Also, apparently my father attempted to go to the Dog Island to look for a remedy and never came back. Although, he went looking for a random remedy instead of seeking out the island's doctor. I'm not that stupid. Not yet anyway. Well, the sea captain sees more sense and offers to take us to the island. Mother bitches at me because she doesn't like me going to the Dog Island, but what's the alternative? Even she knows that it's a futile effort to argue, so she just lets me go. Well, we're off on a voyage to the Dog Island, after everyone parts exceedingly useless advice on us. So then the Twitter bird falls from the sky. Maybe Elon Musk bought him mid-flight. Huzzah! Dinner!
Huzzah!
Holy shit, dolphins! Get the net, we're eating like kings tonight. So after that delightful montage, we have to do some gameplay. Now, I'm usually all for gameplay to break up a story segment, but I have to admit, this part is my least favourite in the game. I mean, you're on a boat, there's not much space, so you just mop the deck and do all the busy work. It's not very fun or interesting, and I honestly think I'd have preferred to just have gone to the island after that cutscene, or to have a few cutscenes on the boat. I'm going to sort of skim this bit, because there's not really much to talk about. I do kind of appreciate on a level that you actually have to work your way through the journey though. A lot of games like Dragon Age 2 kind of skip this part in the story with a time skip. Like, oh, players might not want to finish the game if they actually have to experience this part of things. Yeah, God forbid that we get an opportunity to share an experience with our main character and relate to them. So after a fair few days of busy work, you get told that the wind has changed, and the storm that has been heavily telegraphed since the start of the game is rolling through, and it's basically about to wreck us. Captain El Dorado tells us that we aren't going to make it to the Dog Island because of this storm, and I think he's being a bit premature. I've been on boats in worse weather than this, and there was no sign of anyone thinking of turning back. Anyway, Gwen's having none of that, and she commits suicide. I mean, if she wasn't the protagonist of this story, she'd be dead. Yeah, that's right, swim in the rough seas with your mouth open. That's the best possible thing you could do in this situation. She wakes up to a nice instrumental of the opening theme. She's immediately greeted by Amalia the dog, who has bells and ribbons in her hair. She tells us that we made it to the Dog Island, and that we're an idiot for trying to swim here, and that it's amazing that we weren't killed by sharp rocks. We also owe it to the Twitter bird for telling people that we landed ashore, or no one would have known and we might have died of exposure on the beach. I told you, being the protagonist, at this point in the story, we're bulletproof. Nothing bad can happen to us yet. The Twitter bird flies away, and I believe this is the last time we see him, I think ever. So, the Dr. Dog is apparently operating a clinic in the village, and we can immediately go and see him. I'm glad that this game doesn't do the fashionably late thing that later games did. If this game was made 5 years later, it would probably take you about 3 hours to reach Dr. Dog instead of just 1. I'm sorry, but testicles don't grow back. Shit. So, we explain everything to Dr. Dog that we explained to Amalia like a minute ago, and he explains that he has treated a sickness like this one at one point, but no two cases are alike. He's going to do some research to work out how to treat the brat, and we'll need to bring him some medicinal herbs and flowers and shit. You know, doctor stuff. They apparently just give me a house just for showing up. There's a slight chance that the house is haunted, but honestly, a supposed ghost who nobody's seen is better than The Sims 2 on PSP, where you have to share a house with multiple ghosts who attack you if you try to make use of any of your rooms. I sniff around the house for a bit and do find something supernatural, but it's not a ghost. It's a small patapon looking creature called an Ankh. Ankhs aren't real, like they're purely made up for this game, and there aren't any folklore or anything like that around them in real life. But in this universe, I'd say that they're akin to soot sprites from Spirited Away, or those things from My Neighbor Totoro that we don't really know what the hell they are. They're a bit more vocal than those examples, but they have that similar weird mysterious nature vibe. He's amazed that I can see him as not many dogs can. There's only a few characters in the game that can see Patasi, one of whom is a sniff master, which is alluded to here, and the other is a mystic witch of some kind. So I explained to him about my situation, and he's pretty nice about it and offers to help. Patasi here has his own agenda, but he has a symbiotic nature to him, where he gains power by helping others. His main goal is that he wants to plant an Ankh tree in the middle of the village here and feed it enough goodwill that it'll grow. There's more to this story, but again, we'll get to that in a bit. I know that's become my catchphrase in this episode, but there's 14 hours of game to get through, so yeah, we're gonna get to stuff in a bit, it'll just take some time. So, because I'm a man with priorities, the first thing I do is get myself a bitchin' hat. So the mailman's relative is on the island, and you use him to save your progress and also receive mail from your family and friends back home. I kinda like this as a function. It serves no purpose, but it's a nice addition that adds a bit of immersion to the world. I go back and see Dr. Dog, and he tells me that there's more ingredients to save my brother, and that I need to go out and find them. I feel like he should have these on hand, you know, in case like there's a major flu epidemic or something like that. But no, that's fine. Randos from overseas can just sniff them out when they're needed. Anyway, whilst I'm talking to the doctor, this guy is earwigging on my conversation. Now, one thing that this game does, which you don't see too often, is that the audience knows something that the main character doesn't. This guy's pretending to be this great sniffing master who is able to smell the truth on you. And Gwen believes this, however, the audience know that he's just an eavesdropper and a faker. He is kind of an important character at this point in the game, as he is our first stepping stone on our way to Sniff Mastery, as he's a pupil of the Sniff Masters themselves, and he'll eventually vouch for us if we play along long enough. So this is the first time I stepped out onto the Green Meadows, and I feel like this is a good point to talk about the music. The Green Meadows theme just has that vibe that the musician is playing his heart out. Like, he plays with the enthusiasm of someone who has a gun to their head. Honestly, if there's a piece of trivia out there that explains that he had a gun to his head the entire time, I'd believe it. This piece of music is so pleasant to listen to, but there's several great tracks in this game that are just full of energy and sound quite pleasant. Pupsville is one of them. And I also really like the Highlander track, which is based on the main theme. In fact, I think most of them are a variation of the main theme, but I feel like it sticks out the most on this particular track. The guy who made the music for this provided the guitar work for a lot of Sonic games and Space Channel 5. He's got a good haul of credits, but I kind of wish I'd seen him in more stuff where he's front and center, like this game. I think this is the only music credit I've found where he's the composer rather than a contributor, and the soundtrack is bloody great. It's weird, but Dog's Life also has a great soundtrack. In fact, Dog's Life's composer, Alistair Lindsay, later went on to do games like RimWorld, and apparently did voice work for Perfect Dark. But yeah, RimWorld also has a really memorable and good soundtrack. I don't know what it is about dog games, they're just their own thing. They all have the same crossover when it comes to talking points. There's so many things about this game that's also true for Dog's Life. Combat tutorial. I do like that this tutorial, he's teaching you how combat works, so he brings a bear over to demonstrate. Now, bears are pretty hostile in this game, and this one's willing to call truce so he can demonstrate the rules. It's only fair. Now, the combat in this game is seemingly based around the saying his bark is worse than his bite, as you attack by barking on enemies when they aren't suspecting you. This means that you have to stealth attack enemies that you want to incapacitate, and there's no means of frontal assault or defense. I can't say I'm a huge fan of this. The controls are a bit clunky when it comes to movement, which isn't usually a problem, but during combat, yeah, it's really difficult to get into position quickly. It's especially difficult in higher difficulty areas, where enemies just aren't going to wait for you to get into position. And in some areas, it's like enemies have eyes in the back of their heads and just see you from behind. Also, the bark button is a bit finicky, or at least it was for me. So whilst I'm trying to execute my attack, I think I'm charging a howl, which is the strongest bark you can do, but I'm just stood there staring into space like a plonker. It's far from the worst thing, and you can avoid enemies entirely if you plan your movements well enough, but I would have liked more options. Like maybe if I bark whilst they're coming at me, I could scare them off, or at least stun them long enough to move away. Maybe you could have had items or something like that to distract them or hurt them, I don't know. Just something other than relying solely on this. Also, you can only be attacked so many times before the game is over, and then if you lose your life, you have to go through the inconvenience of losing your items. Oh, and secondarily, your life, your cherished existence. You'll lose that too. Well, actually you don't, you just sort of wake up at the start of the area. Now, I didn't die in this game until around the 2nd or 3rd act. I'll explain how and why when it happens. Early game, it's very easy to avoid enemies and not get killed, so we don't really have to worry about this for a while. So, this guy teaches us how to sniff out the ring fragments. Those come into play later, but the gist of it is that you need to build a ring so you can join the big boys club. So we go back to Dr. Dog, who tells us that we need to find more flowers. I'm starting to think that these flowers have fuck all to do with anything, and it's just him wanting us to leave him alone whilst he works. You know how men are told to get towels when a woman's going into labour? Why do you think that really is? Do you think they need towels? No, they're just trying to get you out of the room. I find him one of the flowers and he informs me that the Victory Gang are up to their old shit again. Who are the Victory Gang? Well, they're a bunch of punks who pick on random townies for no real reason. Well, there's kind of a reason and we do get to it, but right now they're just jerks. That was some excellent foreshadowing as we step outside and instantly come toe to toe with the Victory Dogs. The Victory Dogs are throwing tomatoes at this nurse to trigger her phobia of blood. Though from what she describes, it's more akin to a phobia of the colour red, as anything red and liquid reminds her of blood. I do know some people who have a fear of seeing blood. Thankfully it isn't that bad for them, but if they see a minor cut they lose it and need a timeout. We need to find a brave fruit to make her braver. Kinda wish there were fruits like this in real life. I wonder what would happen if I blended like several of them together and then just made a fruit juice of pure human perfection. Well, I found the fruit and returned to her. She wouldn't faint now even if she saw actual blood. Oh no, we might have actually created a monster here. Shit. At this point in the game, I meet a lumberjack dog. It's here that I notice how many things in this universe are based on human hands. Like, this lumberjack dog uses an axe with an axe handle, despite not having opposable thumbs. I can't help but think, in a world of dogs, wouldn't inventions be things that dogs can use? Like maybe a saw that's held in its mouth, or clamped to the dog's head or paws? This is what makes me think that the dogs in this world inherited their world from us, or something to that effect. Maybe the Anks are like the Reapers from Mass Effect and just left this stuff lying around to cause the dogs to progress faster. Because a lot of dog society is based on human architecture. Maybe the dogs had all this stuff and couldn't make their own, so they just had to adapt and use other species' technology, and their whole society is based around it. That does sound like a kind of interesting sci-fi story if I'm honest. I bring the lumberjack his axe, and he's ready to murder some wood. We find the blue flower just beyond the point where we murdered the tree, and the doctor's one step closer to curing our brat brother. So, Patazi, the not ghost, starts getting a stomachache, beginning the next arc in this story. You need to get him healed, but the problem is that he's an invisible spirit who can't be seen by anyone. Now, my existence isn't disputed. I'm not a creature of legend. I am corporeal and visible, and even I have a hard time getting a doctor's appointment. So I can't even imagine how difficult it is for this poor bastard. Of course, this is after Dr. Dog says that you're making the whole thing up and your Ankh buddy doesn't even exist, so you have to go to the librarian who lives inside a book like it's a tent. Honestly, this guy's living situation is really unfortunate. Apparently this is his house, and it's basically 2 walls that are also his roof. He doesn't have anything to sleep on or eat, but apparently has the ability to store items in his house. I really don't get it. Thankfully there's a witch that lives outside of town, though they mention that her treatments killed someone once, which is a great confidence boost. Thanks weirdo homeless dog that lives in a tent that's shaped like a giant book. So the witch doctor can see our friend here, or at least sense him because she's magic and shit. All I have to do is go home and find ashes from my fireplace. What? You mean I have to walk all the way back home? Man, fuck that. You're shit out of luck, Patazi. Okay, we got the ash, and Obaba is going to make us some medicine, which does the trick. She casually mentions that her medicine killed the best friend of the doctor in town, which is why her services aren't quite as popular these days. Viviana writes to us to tell us that boys are stupid, and she went to her cousin's wedding. We get back to town, and Nurse Francis mentions that Dr. Dog is missing. Fuck, we need him to cure our brat brother. Where is he? We find Dr. Dog standing over a grave, which is something we noticed before, and it hasn't quite come up yet. It's been talked about once or twice in passing, if you ask people about rumours and stuff like that, but this is the first time it's properly addressed in the game. Gwen, this is where my best friend died. Bummer, dude. So the dialogue in this scene really gets heavy. This is where the doctor talks about how he made a mistake that got someone he cared about killed. He talks about how his pride got in the way and how his dreams are haunted by this person even to this day. So, as a small social experiment, I removed the image from the dialogue and sent the subtitles to people and asked them what kind of game this was coming from, judging just from the themes and tones of the scene. I got a lot of answers that basically pointed to, it's Persona, or something like Persona, which honestly, I totally buy that this was a cutscene from Persona just based off the dialogue alone. Then I showed people where it come from, and people were kind of impressed, or at least amused. I don't know if there's a better word for what people were, but it's the best that comes to mind. I mean, what do you think when you see these dogs talking about the regrets of letting someone you love die because of your pride? This game really doesn't screw around with its dark themes, and I love it. There's something even darker coming up later, so don't worry. We're just getting eased in at this point. It's gonna get a lot worse, trust me. Anyway, back to our teacher, who is pissed because, I don't know, we did exactly what we were told, so I don't know why he's upset with us. I then discover how other animals work in relation to the dogs. A lot of them are hostile, but hippos and elephants have a symbiotic relationship, where you can leave food for them and they just move over to it, allowing you to use them as bridges for the rest of the game. So I bring the teacher the second part of the ring that he wanted, and he ominously says that something is happening in the village. And it is. Apparently overnight the worst plague Pupperville has ever seen has swept through, and everything is fucked. We need to bring Dr. Dog a medical herb called Deflungi. That sounds like something you'd make up on the spot. I found it! Ha! The local witch finds me, and she says that the Deflungi can reduce the symptoms, but it won't cure them. But witchcraft can do that, obviously. Oh god, now Dr. Dog is sick. This is all very dramatic. This is like season 4 of The Walking Dead. I don't know if I signed up to this. Dr. Dog is now dying from the flu, but thankfully Obama busts through the front door and wait, no, sorry, it's Obaba. Sorry, that was a typo. I got my own hopes up there. Anyway, she says that bad oglu is mixed into the river water. I haven't a clue what bad oglu is. I googled it in the hopes that I could just say and look smarter than I actually am, as if I knew it all along, but I couldn't find a result other than the Dog Island. I'm just going to assume that it was made up for this game. Obaba gets rid of the oglu. We don't see how or get told what oglu is. I'm just going to take her word for it that she did anything at all. But yeah, we can be thankful for that. So Obaba then takes the time to tell us why Dr. Poten doesn't like her. So Poten had a girlfriend who looked strikingly like me, oddly enough, and she got sick. Apparently Obaba and Poten argued extensively over how to cure her, and they unfortunately didn't quite get around to actually curing her. I do like that this exposition is given to Dr. Dog whilst he's delirious from fever and everyone just loudly barks in his face. I'm sure he's having a wonderful time right now. Dr. Dog tells us that he doesn't actually hate Obaba, but she just sort of reminds him of how shit everything was, and how much of a dick he was for neglecting his patient due to his professional disagreements. To be fair on Dr. Dog, if someone came to me and said it's bad Oglu that's doing this, and I couldn't find any reference to Oglu in any medical book, I probably wouldn't listen to them either. But in this universe, Obaba is right about these things, so I don't know. I mean, he was asked to put a lot of faith in something that seemingly needs to be proven. They decide that they need to put this shit behind them and work together towards doing a good job saving and helping other people in her memory, and this will make her happy from beyond the grave. Some time passes, enough to cure everyone apparently, and Dr. Dog knows a way to cure our little brother. Now we need to go and find a white flower. Christ, this is like Red Dead Redemption, but in reverse, where running around collecting herbs saves your family instead of distracting you from it. Well, after battling a bear for it, I returned with the white flower. Well, I got the cure for my brat brother, and now we're going home to fix him. So, I'm gonna be honest, I did some research on this game whilst playing it, and noticed, in passing, that this game was listed as taking 14 hours to complete. I refuse to believe that a game like this would take 14 hours to complete. I assumed that whoever wrote that was just being slow. On most walkthroughs, this is considered the halfway point in the game. This is kind of true in a narrative perspective, but we're a long way before we finish the rest of this game. I love this shot of the dogs just sailing along like Rose and Jack on the Titanic. The pirate captain is pleasantly surprised to see me, given that the last time we spoke, I jumped into a stormy ocean and was never seen again. So, Emilio has a disease that cannot be cured, even by the best doctor in the region. I don't know what multiple islands clumped together like this would be considered as, so I'm just going to call it a region. He's about to give up, but then we have this bright idea to go out and find a legendary flower that cures all diseases. Oh, thank you, Doctor. We risk our asses to drag you back here to apply modern medicine and science to this conundrum, and you send us after a magic flower. Maybe we should just go and get Santa Claus to give us a hand whilst we're at it. You know, hedge our bets. Well, at least Dr. Dog is going to stay with Emilio and help him ease off his symptoms, so we can be thankful for that. Captain Gold City tells us that it's okay. Gwen is totally going to be safe with him this time. You know, after last time when she fell overboard and almost drowned in a terrible storm? Well, I think the Wanna Dog feels a bit bad for last time, and he just sort of wants to let me ride up front and not pester me with chores anymore. So I guess I'm quite happy about all this. Anyway, we're back to the Dog Island, and this is where I consider Act 2 to begin. I'm going to call it here for this episode, or at least this part of the episode. I'll continue on later on, but I don't want this to be like a 5-hour long video, so I'm going to sort of make this into 3 parts, each one representing each act. So join me next time when we return to the Dog Island to look for the mystical magic flower, and things gradually get crazier as time goes on.